All right, everyone. We are live in studio. Again, I don't know how I feel about saying live. I know.
We're live right now.
We are live right now. It's live and in the flesh right now with the one and only Mr. Justin Ross, a.k.a. Archery Hike. Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate you having you here.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me in and, willing to talk about the event and
Yeah.
all we're doing.
Yeah, so you got your hands in quite a bit of things. I mean, you got the lawn business, the equipment business, I should say. He's not going to come to your house and cut your grass. In fact, he doesn't like grass, which we just talked about earlier. But you got your hands on a lot of stuff. Obviously, Archery Hike, which we'll get into. You guys, if you go back to our Instagram page, you'll see Ben and I and Andrew and I believe my brother-in-law.
Yep.
Yeah. Went to that.
There's a story highlight, right? And
yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's hidden.
Yeah, it's under a vlog, I think, on the Instagram
Yep.
page. So you can go back and check that out. That was pretty fun. We'll get into that here in a little bit, too. But before we get too far, Justin, let's go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about who you are, what you do, and, why we want you in here. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm not really sure why you want me in here. But, my name is Justin Ross. Obviously, I've gotten to know you guys from Archery Hike, and which is a little 3D shooting event I put together, and which has been the culmination of a bunch of things that it turned into that. Along with Archery Hike, I do a lot in the conservation world or in the hunting world. I've hunted since I was a little kid and just been in that outdoor space with emphasis in archery.
Sure.
But as I started hunting, I got into where like this whole living in the natural world and what to do. So I started the chapter of Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry back in 2007 and have been running that ever since. And for anybody that doesn't know what Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry is, which maybe we'll talk about.
Yeah, we will for sure.
It's a nonprofit organization where we take in deer meat, or not deer meat, but actually deer that people, hunters will drop off at our butchers, and then we raise money to pay for the processing, and it goes back in the food bank, the local food banks. But anyway, so I've been doing that for a long time, and among that is just family life with my wife and two girls, and being a sales guy in the golf and sports turf world, selling John Deere equipment.
Yep, cool. Exactly. Miss Ross, we're sorry. No, she was great. We met her wife over there when we were at Archery Hike too. Mm-hmm. And and you're a great supporter of our company, Vance Outdoors. Obviously, you shop with us. I know. Shout out to Brandon, and you guys connected. That's how we first even heard about it. I think we were in the store one day and I saw a random flyer, and I think I had maybe just started picking up the social media at that point.
Yep.
And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, why didn't anybody tell us about that?
Yep.
And it was like, oh, yeah, we're sponsored XYZ. And then we got connected through email. And the next thing you know, you were nice enough to send us a couple tickets to come down. And, we shot that course. It was a fun time. It really was a fun time. I mean, with the weather could have been a little bit nicer for us that day. But
the weather was so bad Saturday and Sunday. If you came Friday, it was great.
Yeah.
There was a fair amount of guys there Friday, and it was great. Man, Saturday and Sunday, it just never let up. It just poured.
I guess it was like 100 degrees on Friday or like 80 with rain.
Yeah.
So honestly, I kind of preferred the rain. I mean, that's just me.
It made the challenge of the hike even greater.
Yeah, I thought it made it fun.
He didn't want to make it easy on anybody that was there, and I think if you shot Saturday, you really got screwed. No, I'm just kidding.
What was good to see was a lot of the folks that came and signed up and shot, you guys all came prepared, which we'll get into, but that's the whole idea of the shoot, is to prepare for a real life situation.
Sure.
And, guys were showing up with packs and rain suits, and they had, you guys had water with you or snacks, whatever, but it was like you were going on this, real life hunting adventure.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea of what Archery Hike is anyways.
Sure.
And so it was good to see that people showed up and were prepared for a mess of weather.
And that was your first one too, so you had no idea, right? And so for those of you who are listening, in that story highlights, and it wouldn't be fair not to compare you to this, but it's our very own version of a total archery challenge. Quite honestly, it was more difficult than the total archery challenge. Now, granted, the one that I shot last year was the easier course, but it was closer to home. We were able to go to the Millstone barbecue afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
He says, oh boy, he knows. He knows. Shout out to all my Logan, Ohio people for Millstone barbecue. This is not a sponsored ad or any means, but go there. But yeah, so if you're familiar with that environment, that people are going to see that on Instagram. They're going to see that on Facebook. They're going to see people tagging it, especially if they're the younger demographic and they're more inclined to be on social media. They're going to see the Total Archery Challenge stuff. So the Archery Hike is exactly that locally, and it went towards a great cause, which let's go ahead and get into why you even wanted to start Archery Hike and the connection between it and Farmers and Hunters for the Hungry.
So, like I said, I've been running a chapter of Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry since 2007. At the same time, I had a buddy that I had hunted with a little bit back in high school. He was full-time Air Force, and he opened up a chapter of Whitetails Unlimited. And we were trying to figure things out. Like, we both love hunting. We both love giving back to the community. And it was like, how can we do that? Well, kind of just random, both set up these chapters, and we're like, let's just do a dinner. That's kind of the gig. We do these dinners and raise money, and people have a good time. And so we started doing that, and we still do it. That started, I think our first dinner was either 07 or 08, right there. We hold up at Cardinal up in Marengo, Ohio.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the listeners are very familiar with. And so we held this big banquet. We raised money, and I would get a grant from Whitetails Unlimited. They would use some of their money for different conservation movements, and then I would use mine to pay for venison that people were wanting to donate to go back into the food bank.
Yep.
And as that continued on, as I mentioned earlier, I've been bow hunting since '95, and so I've been in the world for a while. And everybody, we all love chasing deer with whatever weapons, but archery is fun.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, if I could take archery and Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry and come up with some way as another avenue of raising money, that it would just be awesome.
Sure.
Because it's both are my passion. So Cardinal had at the time an archery course, 3D archery course on an open range that they had the third leg of the IBO at the time years ago. And so a bunch of us, we go up there and shoot. Well, originally I started a bow league, a 6-week bow league that was a direct fundraiser for my chapter FHFH. So we did that for 3 years. And then the 3D course, nobody was really shooting up there, and I'm not sure the reasons, but at any rate, the IBA moved away, which now everybody knows it's down. The third leg is down at Hocking College in Nelsonville.
Yep.
And so that archery course kind of went away, and just life moves, and so I couldn't do it anymore. But fast forward a few years, and my wife and I were able to buy this property in Logan, off a cousin of mine. It had a little cabin on it and so forth, and kind of that dream that everybody has, have your own piece of property you can hunt and just get away and
Sure.
so forth. And it dawned on me, hey, I could go back to that. Maybe I could come up with something as a direct fundraiser for conservation in general, or for FHFH, whatever, Whitetails Unlimited, whatever. And so I got to talking to Joel, which now is retired Air Force and is a field director for Whitetails Unlimited. And he said, man, we absolutely could do something. So we got to scheming a little bit, and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I came up with this dream of Archery Hike, that I'm going to get these targets. I'm just going to place them throughout the property, and we'll have some people come down, we'll shoot and just have a good time. Well, of course, as I do with everything, and my wife would agree, I go full bore into something.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why don't we just turn this into a big event? Who knows what'll happen? And I'm aware of
Sure.
the TAC events and so forth. I've never shot one, and there's reasons behind that. Nothing negative, mainly because I never shot one because I've always had this idea, and I didn't want to dilute what my idea would
Yes.
be,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody say, well, wow, this is really like TAC, or or so forth, which it is in a way, but it is really different.
It very much was.
So anyways, that's a reason I didn't do that. And I thought, I'm going to create my own thing. So, we come into last year, and on a whim, I say, I'm buying these targets. So I get a hold of Brandon, because I've shopped with Vance for a long time.
Yep.
And got a hold of Brandon and said, hey, man, can we figure something out? What's availability? We all know there's been some production issues in the last few years.
Especially last year, yeah.
And he said, I think we can make it happen. So anyways, we ordered some targets. I had another guy that I knew that had some other targets that he was wanting to get rid of. So I ended up, getting my hands on those. And I kind of just threw this together on a whim.
Yeah.
Got it out on social media. and went to the Deer and Turkey Show, or the Outdoor Open Season Sportsman Show in Columbus here. Passed out some flyers. Went to a bunch of different bow shops and passed out flyers to see what would happen. And July came around, and it was time for Archery Hike.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, we had a great time, and I'm laughing because I'm automatically just going back to not only just the fact that it was like pouring down raining on us the whole time, but after we got done, he was like, "Oh yeah, that elk target that's up there, that was like 2 miles in the woods." He's like, I threw it on my back and carried it up there in pieces.
It is.
And we're like, "You did what? You did what?" I was like, "I had a hell of a time even getting to the elk target to pull my arrow out, let alone carrying a damn thing all the way up there."
Yeah.
As many of us know, I tell my kids all the time, but hard work pays off, and if you're willing to put the work in, it's going to pay off. And again, that's the culmination of what just in general and how Archery Hike happened. It's grassroots efforts to raise money for organizations, and the only way to raise money was to do the work. Myself, my wife, kids, my in-laws, just a group of us put that together and said, "Hey, we're just going to work hard and make it happen." And we made it happen.
How many?
It showed, man, for sure. Because, I was expecting them to be right out in the open. That's what I enjoyed about it the most. Like, you hike in, you find the stake, and then you're like, "Wait a second, where is it?"
Yeah.
And then you read the little description. And I'm like, "Oh, that is it down there."
Yeah.
And it was like shooting down into a creek channel, down in the bottom, and I shoot over the hump. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, there was was it the Razorback that was down in the creek in the little gully there, and we were all skipping it off the top of the hillside, just trying to, because that was literally, I mean, you had 6 inches to get it over top of the hillside.
Very precise shots. And some of those shots, I guess I could say, when I set that up, so again, it was just complete grassroots. I walked the property and was like, man, we could put a shot here. Here's a shot. I wanted real life situations.
Sure.
I've been fortunate because I've been in the hunting world for long enough. I've met people. I've been able to do some random just adventures. I like to call them adventures. I mean, they're all hunts. It hasn't always been successful, but a few years ago, I was able to go to Texas and bow hunt hogs, actually a couple times, and I've killed a few. And that gave me the experience of what hogs like.
Yeah.
What do they, where do they want to be, and so forth. And so with that shot, I think it was like trail marker 4 or something. But you stood up kind of on a ridge, and you were shooting down into a little valley where there's a stream. But it was muddy.
Yep.
I mean, just perfect where a hog, if you're searching for a hog, they're going to be down in that cool mud, laying down in that, in that, I guess, wallow, you could say. And you don't want to expose yourself. So you have to trust your gear and know that you got to zip that right over that grade, and you'll make that kill shot. And if I remember right, it was like 38.
Yeah, it was like, I was going to say it was the mid 30s.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
36, something like that was on top of my mind.
Yeah, so for some beginners, and there were some people at Archery Hike that were beginners or not shooting some setups that would probably make some of those shots, which was great because they were testing their abilities. But anyways, if you're in that world, it's not a hard shot as long as you trust your equipment, because your equipment will do it. You just got to trust what it'll do.
Yeah.
And to back up, so when I came up with this idea, I wanted kind of the catchphrase was not your typical walk in the woods. That was my catchphrase. And I wanted real life situations that you could envision yourself being in if you were on a hunt wherever.
Sure.
I guess probably in the lower 48. I mean, I did have a couple Dall sheep as targets, but anything.
You're replicating high country.
yeah. So that was the idea. I want real life situations to test your abilities. And quite frankly, this isn't a competition shoot. It's an event for people to come out, test your abilities, go to the trail marker, move closer if you want to. I don't care. I want you to test your abilities. And in the meantime, while you're testing your shooting abilities, I want your heart racing. Yeah. And that was the idea of the hike, is that you're going to go up and down, sideways, and you're going to get that heart rate up to where you got to calm yourself down and make the shot.
Yeah.
And I feel that we achieved that at the end of the day. And as you guys talk, Saturday and Sunday, man, with the weather, it really was. It was nasty.
Oh yeah.
How many times did Andrew bite it? He fell like 3 or 4 times.
He fell like 3 or 4 times. And it was funny because he also fell a couple times when we were at TAC, I think, too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, wait. Did we come down like a logging road on the way back through? Yeah, then that's
the last time he fell.
Yeah, he fell. Yeah, and it was fun because the very first target was, I think, the bedded doe, if I'm not mistaken, and she was in the power line cut. And then after that,
and there was a standing mule deer right up above her.
Yeah, and I think we all went for the mule deer on that one. I think the doe was almost a little bit too covered up or something like that. And we're like, let's just go for the longer. It was a longer shot, but it was a little bit more clear of a picture. And then right following that, I believe we got kind of scattered up the hill.
I think it was the bison shot down the hill.
Yeah, that was like 90 yards in the rain.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was an open shot.
Yeah.
At a bison, huge target. But there was definitely some distance, a little downhill, but distance.
Yep.
And the other target was the alligator in the creek.
Oh yeah, see, I don't think we saw that until we got back down there, did we? Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't even see it from the top of the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, we just saw the bison and we're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't even looking for anything else, honestly.
No.
I probably should have, but just like, oh, there it is.
One thing which we'll talk about later as we approach Archery Hike 2023 in Hocking Hills, the hike part, again, just from my age, we travel a lot. We don't do these typical beach vacations.
Yeah.
My wife and I, kids, whatever, we're going places we're just hiking out in the natural world. And again, just fortunate that my wife loves the same thing. And we've hiked all over the place, in multiple continents. We'll just go on these random vacations and just be out in the natural world. And that part of it. So when you go hike, whether you just hike locally or wherever, typically you get a trail guide, or maybe you go to All Trails, and it has a trail guide on it, what to expect, people's reviews, and so forth. And what we haven't talked about is part of Archery Hike was when you checked in, I had a trail guide, and which I've got one sitting here now, but within the trail guide, there was a scorecard if people wanted to keep score for whatever. Again, the idea was that you were just to make that lethal shot, make that double lung shot. However you could. If you had to get closer, you had to move off behind a tree, whatever. But put yourself in a real-life situation, make that double lung shot. But on the back of the trail guide was a description.
Yes.
And there was 12 trail markers. For anybody that wasn't there, there was 12 trail markers through, I think it was about a 1.5 mile hike. And there was roughly 300 feet of elevation gain, and each trail marker then had 2 targets. Yes. And my original idea, which because of the weather, it didn't really play out that way, but people would hike it twice. So they get roughly a 3 mile hike in. Yep. And so you would hike to trail marker 1, and you would read the description of what was at trail marker 1. And you pick a target, shoot, go 2, so forth, all the way through 12. And come back, maybe hang out at the cabin there. We had practice range set up, guys just BSing, and then go back out and hike it again. Well, with the weather being bad and the trail guide obviously printed on paper, so people weren't getting it out.
Yes.
Because it was getting soaked or whatever.
I think that's what we ran into.
Yeah. And so you didn't find all the targets. And there was multiple people. There was multiple people that didn't find all the targets. And I wouldn't say that they were really hard to find, but I knew what I was doing. Yeah. You guys didn't know what you're getting into. So if you didn't read the trail guide, you probably wouldn't find them. It because again, they weren't 20-yard shots in the wide open. And there were some other people that actually shot a couple of the targets you could see from a different trail marker. I think it was trail marker 10 was where the elk was up. Was it 80 yards?
Across the valley. Mm-hmm. Across the little gorge, if you will.
Yeah. And I really think that was my favorite target.
It was my favorite target too.
Because when the sun was shining in here, you could just see it beaming off this full-body elk standing up there, and you could just envision that you were spotting and stalking up through there, and there's this elk bugling in the hillside, and all of a sudden, bam, there he is, and you got to make that shot, and it would just seem very real life, where that target was placed. But at that trail marker, 11 was just down a little bit below that, and there was a wolf and a ram. Yeah, there was a ram up on that hillside. But anyways, I think there was a few people I know for sure from trail marker 10 was shot the wolf. And they missed the doll sheet below. Yep. So on the property, there's a big rock overhang and somewhat of a cave below it. But I thought, man, it's kind of real life to have a doll sheep right up against the rock laying there bedded. And it was bedded, kind of under the rock. And maybe it was a 40 40-some yard shot, if I remember right. And again, you had to trust to kind of shoot over that hillside. You didn't want to expose yourself. And if you shot high, you just arrow was going into a rock.
Yep.
But anyways, the trail guide helped if you could read that because you know what you were looking for. I could read some of the descriptions, but it mainly gave you an idea. It didn't say, "Hey, there's an elk at 80 yards." It said, you got to trail marker 10, and you're after one of the most majestic animals in the western U.S. or something like that.
Yep. It was
you can hear him bugle.
Yeah, kind of like not like a riddle, but kind of like a description without being a description, like telling you exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah,
I think we just picked up on the fact that there was more than one target after we got, because I think after the bison, I think there was there like a turkey. Or so, like after that?
Yeah, so you retrieved your arrows there at trail marker 2. You had the bison out in the food plot, or like the open prairie, you could say, and the alligator laying in the creek on the side of the water there. You circled around that food plot, and then number 3 there was a standing turkey just up maybe 30 some yards, standing turkey, and then there was a bobcat that essentially was chasing, stalking the turkey, and I think the bobcat was at 25 or something. It wasn't that far. But again, if you're not, a bobcat's not going to be stalking something out in the wide open. It's probably going to be in the trees if the turkey's in the trees. So, if you weren't paying attention to the trail guide, or you wouldn't have seen that bobcat because he was kind of hidden.
Yeah. And I know that's what you liked about it too. Like you said, is that, and that's what it is different than TAC, and that's why I liked it too, because it was just a different experience. And you can tell that you not that you tried, but you just made it what you wanted it to be, because there you would have a flag. You had a flag on your target. Now you're still shooting an elk at 50 yards through the woods or whatever, but you have a cone with a flag, and you're shooting something that has a flag, so you can kind of see what you're going after. Whereas here, it was just like, okay, well, let's look around. Okay, boom, there it is. I know you enjoyed it that way too.
Yeah, I just liked. I mean, it's my bad that I didn't read the trail guide, to find them. I should have paid more attention when we started off, but I enjoyed. Like just kind of looking for them, even though I didn't know what was supposed to be there. It's just like, oh, there's one. Oh wait, there might be another one over there somewhere.
Especially when we went up that hillside after the Razorback, because the hillside was real sloppy and muddy, and like the ferns and stuff were giving out.
Yep.
And then we got to the top of that, we're like, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, there it is. Yeah, cool. And then, of course, busting each other's balls about missing targets and doing stuff. Now, one thing I didn't tell you, so the what target was it? The last turkey in the open, you shot it from the woods downhill. He knows where I'm getting ready to go with this. You shot it from the woods downhill. It was an open field.
Yeah, trail marker 5. There was that open area. There was a strutting turkey.
Yep.
And then the pronghorn.
Yes.
Was out.
So I laugh. He's gonna crack up. So we're all like, okay. Range it. Did you have a rangefinder?
I did.
You had that one I gave you or whatever? Okay. So we're range finding it, and we're like, oh, okay. It was like 40-something yards, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And I looked at Andrew, who's on a pro staff team. You guys have heard him on this podcast several times, and I'm like, hey, 36. He's like, okay, 36. Like, 36? And we're like, hey, Ben, it's 36. He's like, oh, okay. Goes up and draws back, shoots, hits like every branch on the way down. And he's like, what, 36? I'm like, yeah, man. We're like, no, we just got you.
Like, you guys suck.
And we're all laughing. It was great. Andrew's got it all on GoPro. Yeah. We'll have to get some of that footage over to you, because he did like a little reel, GoPro highlight video thing or whatever. And that was about the only way we could have filmed any of that, because he just stuck it on like a branch or whatever he found that was like close.
Most of the time he clipped it to his limbs on his bow and just kind of held his bow out like a selfie stick.
So.
Yeah. That was another objective of Archery Hike, and I can't remember Saturday. I can't remember each day how many people were there, but there was maybe, I don't know, 10-15% of the people that came, they had somebody else that came with them, and they had reached out to me and said, hey, is there an extra cost? I'm like, no, man, just come along and maybe video or tag us in a picture or something, but come along and just go on the hike, because they didn't want to shoot, but they wanted to come with their boyfriend or whoever.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was another cool thing. And one of the objectives was to just get people outside and enjoy the outdoors. I think we could all say, at least I know for myself, if I'm having a bad day, just getting outside, maybe taking a dog for a walk, or for me, for sure, if I'm having a bad day, I just go shoot my bow, because it does something for me. It clears my head. It just makes things better.
Sure.
And so if you could be outside listening to the rain coming down, but you're shooting your bow, you're hanging out with your buddies, or maybe your spouse, but you're having a good time. Yep. And I didn't get one bad review from anybody. They were like, this was the greatest thing we could have done.
There's nothing like it in the state. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing like it outside. There's really nothing like it outside of that national scale. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially for us. And you're in one of the most beautiful parts the state has to offer. You know, let's say you get done with that, and it's Friday, and I shoot the morning. Maybe I don't want to run around again, but maybe I want to go to Old Man's Cave. Maybe I want to go to Ash Cave. Maybe I want to go further south on Athens or Nelsonville or whatever have you. There's so much to do down there that makes it that much more enjoyable. Or go zip line or whatever. Or
go to Millstone Barbecue.
Yeah, or go have a 32-ounce beer at Millstone and soak away all the 3 or 4 arrows that you just sunk into a tree.
Yeah. I only broke one arrow the whole time.
Did you?
I think it was the last shot, the very last one downhill.
Oh yeah, the two whitetails. There was a doe and a buck. Like the buck was tending a doe.
Yep.
At the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah, that again, one of the real life situation. You think you're out in November, probably not spotting stalking whitetails in Ohio, but maybe. But you could visualize that. You could see that buck was tending that doe, and they were coming up that draw, and typically on 3D targets, you see in broadside, you're just shooting double lungs broadside. Well, those were both quartering to you.
They were.
And, you know, in real life, that's going to happen all the time. And maybe you don't make that shot, but in a 3D shoot, you pull your binoculars up, you look, and you pick that spot, and then you make that shot. And I don't think it was an overly hard shot, but there was some distance and some downhill.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard to get a range because those animals were in the bottom. And if you didn't have a good rangefinder, you probably weren't getting that reflective coming back to get a good range. And so, and maybe that's what happened to you. I'm not sure, but there was definitely some arrows that didn't hit the mark. There was one arrow that had went through the leg.
I think I missed a little bit. I think I hit foam, but I think I still missed.
I took 2 shots there. The first one, it went right in between the antlers.
Oh, really?
Because I was aiming for the chest, you know. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna. It's last shot. I'm gonna take another shot. So next one I drilled him, you know. But it was just the down. It was like the downhill thing. Once I got set, when I leaned into it, I was like all messed up because it was kind of on a hill, and you know.
And that's where having a good rangefinder makes a big difference too. You know, having something that can compensate for that angle. You know, adding the yards or subtracting yards depending on what you got going on. That's where that would have been clutch too, and I don't think that one.
That was before I got the Vortex.
Yeah. Shout out Vortex for that one, because now that they have it, you know, excuse me, that makes a big difference for sure. So,
and I feel like with the accuracy or just knowing your equipment, there were some shots you didn't really have to have. You know, with you talk to these sites these days with second axis, third axis. Yeah. Some of those shots, a third axis, probably, if you didn't have that, if you were out of whack, you probably missed just because you didn't have a third axis set up on your sight. And if somebody did, they were probably able to, because there was some, I wouldn't say extreme uphill, downhill, but there was some.
There's enough that would have made a difference. I mean, it wasn't any more than shooting 20 feet up out of your tree stand. But you know, typically you're not taking a 30, 40-yard shot at that distance. You're only taking a 15 to 20, you know, for a whitetail. So if you showed up to one of these events and you weren't dialed and you were just running, again, you could have gotten closer. But if you wanted to really challenge yourself, you really needed to have equipment that you trusted and you can stand behind, and you're comfortable shooting from 0 to 80 yards, 90 yards at times. I mean, everything comes into play at that point, you know. Whether your veins can clear. I mean, it gets pretty technical once you get that far. And so it's while you want everyone to show up, you also need to be really have the equipment that can make you better at this too. It's only going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. Or like we've discussed, if you feel that your max distance is 40 yards and you got an elk at 80, I mean, everybody wants to shoot that elk target because it's just majestic. You see it up there. So, you know, take your equipment, send it at 80 if you want. But, you know, go to that 40 yards and say, hey, I can make that shot from 40. We're just going to move up here. As you guys go to pull your arrows, let's walk up here. I'm going to shoot, and then we'll go get it.
Yep.
Because I want to test your abilities. And not everybody can shoot at 80 yards, you know. But if you've got the equipment, you should be able to shoot at 80 yards, you know, 3D-wise at least. And, you know, talking about people and their equipment, there was a lady came out. She shoots a horse bow, and I think it was Friday when she came.
Okay.
So I guess in a way, a style of a recurve.
Okay, yeah.
And her and her mom came out, and she just wanted to shoot. She didn't know if it would be something applicable to her or not. She's shooting 20 yards or whatever, and shooting off of a horse for that matter.
Yeah.
But anyway, she came out and she enjoyed it, and she even said, "Man, some of these were just not attainable for me." But she had a good time because it tested her abilities, and which was nice to have an influx of people that. Newbies maybe, and some people just want to get out and be outside and hike, and then some people that actually had the equipment and they were serious. I mean, we had a couple people that shoot a lot of competitions, and I think they took, man, it may have been 4 hours, 5 hours to shoot that course, because they were really dialed into they were picking a single little spot trying to shoot that 11 ring on every target.
Okay.
But that was their gig. That's what they liked.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. And they would just let people pass through, and they would shoot, and they go to the next one.
Yeah, that's the only downside of some of that stuff is that you come across, even not like a recreational shoot like this was, but even if you're doing like a state 3D tournament or ASA tournament, you get a lot of people. That was the one complaint that we had over there at Craig Holy Cross's.
But that's just like golf.
Yeah,
you're gonna run into that.
There's the pace of play sometimes, if you will. You're gonna run into that too, and it helps when they let you go through. But sometimes that can make or break. If you only got two guys, it's again like golf. Hey, let me play through. Now I'll tell you, I can make a 40-yard shot with a bow a lot better than I can make a 200-yard drive when I'm playing through. Because it never fails. They let you play through, and you shank one into the pond, and you look like an idiot.
Of course.
But yeah, that can make or break the experience too. But we never ran into anything like that.
Nope.
I mean, I don't think we had anybody in front of us, honestly.
Yeah, we kept it moving, and the couple in front of us were just flying through.
And there was four of us, so it was pretty fun. Well, it's definitely going to be, as long as you're doing it, we're going to be there for sure, because it's too close to home, and it was nice to get everyone together and do it. And hopefully we can bring more people. I'd like to have 8 people there with us. I mean, the more the merrier, because it just makes it that much fun, especially when you bring in that competition. Man, that competition just makes everything so much more fun.
Oh, when you're, that's really what makes it fun, is when you're just busting up with each other and having a good time. And like you were saying, telling Ben it's 36 yards, and maybe it's 46, and he just it's like, hey, sucker, you should have checked it yourself. There goes a $30 arrow down the drain.
Exactly. Well, and I tell you what, next time any of these shoots like that, I'm going to start fletching with some black fletchings. You guys ain't going to see my stuff. That's going to be my trick next year.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
It's fun to get in these shoots and guys shooting with lighted nocks. Some people would prefer them to go first, because then you've got something to aim at. But the guy with the lighted knock doesn't want to go first, because he knows that next arrow is going right at that lighted knock, and that just added another $10 to that arrow.
Yeah, he talks about. Remember when we went to Craig's? Actually, he texted me while I was out with COVID, going back to Craig's to Muskingum and shooting with the archery team there at Muskingum University. And do you remember I brought my bow, but I forgot my arrows. And you happened. It was one of those things where it's just like I just grabbed whatever I had, and so I forgot my arrows. They were all set ever to hunt, and I didn't have anything for indoor. Or I was building some. I can't remember which way. I was in and out of arrows all year last year, building some and whatever. But remember, you had the lighted knock.
Yep. I think I had a couple, and I gave you maybe 2 with the standard and 1 with the lighted. Yeah. So
we're shooting the lighted knock against these kids in Muskingum. They're loving it, because I'm like, I'm 10 ring. I'm not 12 or 11 or whatever, and it was close enough. I'm like, oh, thanks.
Don't drill my arrow.
Yeah.
There were guys at that the ASA qualifier thing that Craig did out there too at the farm, and there were 2 guys. They were like I think ABB pro staff guys, but they were buddies. They're from Pennsylvania. The one guy shot his arrow in, and the next guy was like really concentrating, and he shot, and you could hear whack. And he's like, I just drilled your arrow. And his buddy's like, dude, that was like $30.
Yeah.
He's like, you just freaking cost me $30. And they were just busting each other's balls. It's just
great.
And those 23s aren't the same cost as Easton Access or a Carbon Express.
Right.
By any means. So
you mentioned in Pennsylvania, that was something that I didn't expect. And we had people from, I think it was 5 different states. We had Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and a guy that came in from Illinois.
Okay, really?
And he was he was going to be. I think he was in for work. If I remember right, he was in for some work, and he had a buddy that lived there, and a buddy told him about it, and he's like, "Well, bring your bow, and you can come shoot." So, he probably wouldn't have came otherwise, but he was there working. But 5 different states, and
that's cool.
It was just something neat to see that people. We all talk about social media and how you can reach so many people, and just a few social media posts, how fast it got out, and you know, people started signing up, and just to get people from 5 states, it was. It makes you excited about.
Yeah, that is really cool. And you never know, that guy might come back with his buddies or something. He might make a trip out of it. For this year. That'd be cool. Exactly.
Like I said, going back to the cabin stuff. I mean, you can make a weekend of it. You can shoot that, and then you can go stay in a cabin and soak in a hot tub all night.
Yep.
I mean, it's the perfect spot for it's the perfect spot for that in the state, I think, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, whether you're in Logan or just down the street in Nelsonville or Athens, whatever. I mean, there's so many hikes and so much outdoor recreation. Even with Wayne National Forest, if you want to go off and be by yourself, go to Wayne National. You've got that. You got Hocking State Forest right there around Logan, or you get into Old Man's Cave and all the other Conkle's Hollow and Rock House. I mean, they're all right there within 10, 15-minute drive.
Yep.
It really is. You really can make a weekend out of it.
Oh, for sure. I actually just heard on the radio. It was 2 days ago. Hocking Hills area, the Old Man's Cave recreational area, the park in general. Out of state parks, it was voted like top 5 or 6 in the country. I mean, you're competing against California, Arizona, and all this Colorado. It was Hocking Hills, Old Man's Cave was voted in at least the top 10 across the entire country in terms of state parks.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really neat to hear that. It's super cool. If you're in Ohio, you definitely need to get down there. Actually, before they shut it down, COVID, I think that was probably the last time I went. And we hiked. We're like, oh, what do we do? Before they shut down, we hiked with my kids and stuff. And that was probably outside of the archery hike. Was probably the last time I was down there. I need to make an effort to get down there more.
It's crazy that there's so many people, including myself. I mean, we've been in Hocking Hills forever, and now we own that piece of property down there as well that's close by. But there's so many people go there, but then you've got Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio. Nobody goes there. No. Like in comparison, everybody wants to go to Hocking Hills because it's such a beautiful area of the state.
Now I do enjoy Cuyahoga. I've been there a couple times. I don't live in the Northeast Ohio area is the problem. It's a 2-hour drive. And it's really weird because we're getting on a completely separate subject, and we'll get back into it here in a second. But Brandywine Falls, if you're familiar with Cuyahoga Valley, it's literally a stone's throw away from a highway. Like, you can hear the cars driving down the highway. It's the most bizarre thing ever. It's probably the coolest waterfall I've ever seen, especially in the state. And it's like, you can hear a car. It's bizarre. Yeah. It's bizarre. But like you said, you get to Hocking, and you're down there in the Gully, Old Man's Cave, and Devil's Bathtub, and all that cool stuff down there in the bottom, and you're completely, there's no service, and you're completely separated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great area.
All right, everyone, we need to take a quick break from our conversation with Justin to thank our show sponsor, Toby Burdett, with Burdett Taxidermy and Legends Big Game Recovery. Hunting seasons are coming to a close, and maybe some of you are still trying to fill that tag. If you're in Ohio or the surrounding states and you want to get some of those memories preserved, give Toby a call at 740-281-6435. Thanks, everyone. Good luck with the remainder of your season. Let's get back into the conversation. Let's go ahead and switch gears from that just a little bit. So obviously, there was a reason why we had Archery Hike, and that was to raise money for farmers and hunters feeding the hungry. Let's dive into that. I know that's a huge part of your life right now. And let's dive into FHFH. It's gonna be that's a tongue twister. That's a tongue twister for sure. Let's get into that, and let's really inform the people what that is. They may have heard people, hey, donate it, but they may have not heard how deep this organization actually goes and how it's actually on a national scale as well.
So FHFH was created by Rick Wilson back in 1997. There's a story behind it. Quite frankly, he was a school teacher, and I think he may have been on his way home from teaching or something, but there was a lady on the side of the road, flagged him down, said, hey, is there any way you can go back here in the woods and help me get this deer?
Sure.
Help me get it out of the woods, put it in the trunk. I want to bring it home for my kids. And, Rick was like, hey, seems weird. I don't know what I'm getting into, but I feel like I should do that. So he goes with her. Sure enough, there's a dead deer. It was a roadkill deer. Picks it up, puts it, and she said, I appreciate, this is my meat for the kids. and from there he had the grassroots idea of just like, man, we need to do something about that. We've got this huge natural resource with whitetails, among other animals, but whitetails, it's a great protein source. And so he started up this ministry within his church to raise a little bit of money, get some people to, donate a few deer here and there, and the money would cover the processing cost, the butchering cost, and then that meat would go straight to a food bank within his area there around Hagerstown, Maryland. Fast forward a couple of years, he laughs, he's actually stepped away from the organization now, and his son Josh runs it. But Rick will laugh and tell you, like his church finally, he's like, man, you got something going here. Your budget's bigger than the church budget. Like you need to get going and do your own thing. And at the time, then Rick had retired from teaching and so forth. And he created FHFH, or it was created, but it took it to a bigger scale. I think the state of Maryland, the Division of Wildlife or Parks and Wildlife, whatever their division's called, they came up with a way of helping him raise funds with some matching grant. And soon after that, it started moving west and got fairly big in Ohio.
Yeah.
It was about the time I was stepping in, just by chance in 2007. I knew some guys, or I had a butcher locally that was taking meat to donate. And so I was like, man, I could do something like this. This is great. I love the natural world. We all love hunting, but if we don't give back, we're just taking.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So let's find a way to give back and make this full circle. And so anyways, I started my chapter, like I mentioned earlier. And so now I think there's 30 some chapters in the state of Ohio. Okay. We go all the way out west. Every year we get our main source is whitetails. We'll get some elk that are donated as well. But something we've stepped into a little bit, really kind of the last few years as COVID, kept people home and we had more hunters getting out in the field, and they were keeping their meat instead of donating it. They were keeping it, and we had to find another source. So we started talking with 4-H groups and so forth, and we actually, it's not a big portion of our donation and, compared to deer, but we'll actually take some steers and hogs that people will donate to the organization. So we're raising money to pay for that. Again, the idea is to raise money locally, pay a local butcher, and turn that meat back into local food banks, soup kitchens, and so forth for people that are less fortunate than others.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too, because growing up, I've always known it as Hunters for Hungry, and I never even really heard the farmers aspect until we started meeting and talking with you. And it's cool to know that though. It's like there are other resources. Now, mainly like you said, it's going to be primarily whitetail, but it goes a lot more than just the hunter side of that too, which anytime you can get other groups involved, especially like 4-H, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. We had one chapter coordinator out Eastern Ohio. He raised some money, and he was the local county fair. He just bought a bunch of chickens.
Yeah.
He went to the sale and he bought a bunch of chickens, and it doesn't have to be steers or hogs or whitetail. He found a source to buy a bunch of chickens. And from these 4-H groups,
sure.
And he turned that chicken went back into the food bank.
That's awesome.
So we were finding all these other ways as people have kept their deer meat. With meat prices, prices are expensive, and again, we got this national or natural resource of protein, and I don't think we're going to deplete the whitetails anytime soon.
Yeah.
No. I mean, heck, I just saw the numbers they have hundreds of thousands harvested this year, and I still drive to work and see 10.
Right.
It's like, okay, sure.
You brought up Hunters for the Hungry, so there are other feeding organizations within throughout the country. There's plenty of them. What's the big one in everybody talks about in Iowa?
Not sure.
Man, I can't think of it now. But anyways, it's another way for hunters that maybe they travel out there and they don't have a way to get the meat back, but they want to go hunt a different state,
sure.
And they can donate that meat and obviously put it to good use. It gets used. It always gets used, but in a different avenue. Mm-hmm. And so Josh this year, our executive director, he felt the need within our website. So we redesigned our whole website, which is FHFH.org. Actually, I think that'll redirect you now to feedthehungry.org. And his idea was, we're one of many feeding ministries, and our whole objective is to just feed people. It doesn't matter what organization you're using.
Sure.
And so there's this interactive map now on our website that labels any info he has, and anybody that's listening, if you get on the website and you're like, hey, we're a feeding ministry, can we be listed on your website?
Sure.
Josh will get you on there, and he has butchers labeled. He has coordinators for across the United States of all these different organizations. So you can zoom in on your area, and maybe it's not FHFH, awesome. maybe it's Hunters for the Hungry in Virginia or North Carolina, but you've got that contact info right on our interactive map. So his idea was, let's link everybody, because that's all we want to do is feed people.
At the end of the day, yeah.
And just because I run Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry here locally, that doesn't mean that what somebody else is doing is bad. They're doing the same thing.
Yes.
Yep.
And so now that's all intertwined into our website.
That's awesome.
So anybody listening that's out there, again, you can find a feeding ministry local to you that will do what we have been doing for years.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think the very first time I heard of it, Caleb Shoemaker, which you've kind of known, Junction City, runs around with Brandon and those guys. He shot a really nice buck, and he was like, I'm just not going to eat it. So he was able to keep the head and shoulder and stuff for have them out, and he donated it all. I'm like, man, that's super cool. No, I don't kill enough deer a year to even I'm lucky to keep myself full. But I mean, once you get one or two, I mean, unless you have a family of like eight people, it takes a while to get through something like that, especially if you're killing big deer. And so, if you have extra and you want to take people out, man, it's a great avenue.
And just to clarify, different organizations do different things. Within Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry, it is free to donate your deer.
Yes.
You just have to go to one of our approved butchers. That we use those butchers because of just essentially insurance liability. We just can't have every Tom, Dick, and Harry butchering deer and giving meat out to everybody because of liability issues. But if you go to one of our butchers, all you have to do, you harvest that animal, you field dress it, you tag it like you normally would, take it to our butcher, drop it off, tell them, hey, I want to donate to FHFH. They say, perfect. They write it down, write your tag number down. It was donated, free and clear. You're good to go.
Yeah.
And you're off the hook, and then that's where I step in with paying that butcher bill.
Yeah.
Other programs aren't the same. Each program has a different way of doing things. So that's something you might want to, listeners, check into whatever program's close to you, because maybe you need to pay that butchering bill or whatever. But to clarify, with Farmers and Hunters Feeding Hungry, it is all covered.
Okay, cool. Now, has there been? I know we'll get into the process here. It's just a random thought that came to mind. Knowing where you live now and the situation that we have just north of you in North Central Ohio with CWD, has that affected like the donation site, or if like has that, like with the harvest and stuff in that area, have you seen anything different with that area now that there has to be a little bit extra testing and stuff before obviously people are consuming that meat?
So within the Division of Wildlife, I think, and I don't have the regulations right in front of me, but I think every deer that was killed in that 3-county area in gun season was every deer in gun season was tested, and then there was you could have it tested, anything in
at your processor or whatever. Your certified taxidermist or processor. Yeah.
Again, I'm not FHFH, or any of the chapter coordinators. Who are we to say it's edible or not edible? So that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, is that we tell the hunters that want to donate their animals, take it to the donation site, or the butcher.
Yep.
And we leave it up to that professional butcher to say,
yeah,
it's good, or no. And as in the CWD, obviously it's here in Ohio, and it's a hot, debated topic.
Yeah.
But we're going to leave it up to the butcher.
Yeah.
If the butcher says, it's good to go, then I trust the butcher. He's a professional. But with you bringing up, things changing, that's one thing we've seen.
Yeah.
I've lost a butcher due to everybody going. Well, people have a lot of butchers have gotten away from butchering deer because the market for hogs and steers is so great.
I'll bet
there's a lot of butchers that are booked out 2 years. They're booking butcher dates for animals that aren't even born yet.
Yep.
So that's been a hindrance to us in the whitetail donation world, is finding butchers that are able to butcher for us, because there's a lot of butchers that just aren't doing deer anymore because they don't have the time, and the market's better with steer and hogs.
That leads me right into like Scott and Seth with their family business. I mean, I know that they're primarily doing the bearded butchers that we've had on the episode. They got out completely doing whitetail altogether, and they're just primarily focused on feeding, bison, beef, chicken, pork to do their fill their needs for their own shop. They're like, we just can't handle doing the venison for customers anymore like we used to. So where I go is Phillips. There in Zanesville. Of course, they do a little bit of everything too. I've actually used.
They're a bigger butcher shop too, Phillips.
Yeah, they're decent size. And then another good one too locally is I've never been to Oilers in Utica, but I went to there's one here in Newark, Norfolk. I
don't know that one.
It's right on the east side of town, and then Old Town or Old Village Meats. Old Village Meats in Frazeysburg. That's a great one too.
Yeah,
that's a very good one. But your point with the steer is pretty interesting too, because my dad would call me randomly and be like, hey, this farmer that I know has a steer ready to be slaughtered and processed. We got till like tomorrow to make a decision on whether or not we want to do it. You want to buy 300 pounds of meat? It's like, yeah, sure. I guess maybe and so, but like your point though, it's like you're either in or you're out, because it's, they're moving.
Yeah. And that's something for the listeners that wouldn't know. For domestic raised, beef, hogs, chickens, whatever, there is a high amount of regulation when that goes to the butcher. Those animals have to walk in. There's a lot of things that those animals have to meet to be able to go into the market for people to purchase. And sometimes those animals don't meet regulation. Yeah. That I'm assuming the Department of Ag has put out or whatever. And a lot of times those are the animals that we'll get. Maybe one has a bum leg or something. I don't know all the regulations, but they'll have a bum leg. It's still a fine animal, but it couldn't meet a certain regulation that it had to for the standardized world. And nobody wants that meat to go to waste. It's still good meat. Yeah. And those are sometimes those are the animals that we'll get, because they're like, hey man, we don't want this thing to go to waste. It's like, if the butcher says it's good, bring it to us. We'll pay for it. Let's just figure out a price. We'll pay for it. It goes right back into the local area and it'll get it used. There's no sense in getting rid of the meat.
Yeah, well, it's the commercialization process of that makes a big difference, right? That's the whole, you can't sell wild game meat. That's the whole reason for that too. It has to be inspected USDA, Department of Ag, all that good stuff. So that kind of leads us to another point. He mentioned paying for it a couple times. We recently just got some great news. I know we shared it on our page. Obviously, you were privy to it a lot sooner than what I found out. But the Department of Wildlife just did a grant, I guess I should say, $25,000 grant to help you purchase this meat. I'm sure that made a huge difference in your budget.
Oh yeah, that's been huge. So if you go back a handful of years, we were in conjunction with the Division of Wildlife for years, and they were giving us matching grant money, and they viewed us as a way to help manage the herd. Sure. You were buying, say 15. I even think back in the day, you could get doe tags or urban tags in certain parts of the state for $10, and I think they went to 15 a few years after that. But the Division of Wildlife had came to us years and years ago and said, "Hey man, we want to work with you to help manage this herd." That was their view on it. If we can get people buying extra tags, go harvest does, maybe they don't need the meat, but if you guys can raise money and we give you some matching grant money, it's a perfect management strategy. So we did that for years and years, and then we got away from it. It wasn't necessary just because donations weren't where they were, as in number of deer, and so we didn't really need the matching grant money. So we got away from that. Well, fast forward to this past summer, I had a conversation with Chief Kendra Wecker.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of know her from in town. But anyways, we just got to talking. She's like, "Yeah, we'd like to make a grant to you guys and kind of get back involved." And I said, "Oh, great. Here, I'll get you in touch with Josh and our executive director, and you guys work something out on a national level because, I guess in a national scheme, but it's all staying here in Ohio. Yeah. But deal with him because I'm just one chapter coordinator in a local area." So they got to talking, and sure enough, they donated or granted, I shouldn't say donate, but granted $25,000 to the organization, and when we're paying we pay roughly $50-$60 per deer. Okay. And it comes out, give or take $1 a pound. Sure. Per processed meat. And if you look at a dollar and you say quarter pound servings, like a quarter pound burger or whatever, sure. I mean, you're talking 25 cents a meal.
That's awesome.
That $25,000 goes a long way and feeds a ton of people. Mm-hmm. And again, like we just said, when the state of Ohio, we're harvesting 180,000 deer a year, 175, give or take 200,000 in the past 20 years. It's been in that area. So we're not depleting the natural resource at all. We're just finding another way to use it, which is just, it's harmony. It's great.
I love it.
And so to have the division step in and say, hey, what you guys are doing is very meaningful and impactful. We want to help. And so that's what they did. And it's been fantastic ever since.
Yeah, that's great.
I know we talked a little bit too. I don't know if you want to mention you were interested in the process of it. When you get your cuts, you're obviously doing your own cut.
Yeah, it's not really important, I guess, but I just wondered, do they just grind it all, or do they like make primal cuts and then cook it accordingly, or?
Well, and to touch on that too, like you had mentioned just a minute ago, you're not bringing in an animal. You're not going to butcher this animal in your garage and bring the processor meat.
Yeah.
You're going to be dropping off an entire doe or entire buck or whatever, getting your head, getting your shoulder mount, whatever. What's the process like?
Ultimately, the important part is the people are getting fed. Need to be fed. I was just curious if they just grind it all or if they do the primal cuts and stuff like that.
I don't know of any. I can't say 100% because I'm not totally certain, but I don't know of any butchers that we use that don't just grind everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
There could be some that would keep a few roasts out here or there. Maybe they've got a food bank or a soup kitchen that we've dealt with for a long time, and that soup kitchen's like, hey, do you guys have any roasts? And maybe they would just cut a couple of roasts for maybe they've got not a wild game dinner, but like a food pantry night where they've got people in and they want that different cut. But if we look at meat in general, the most usable cut, I guess you could say, is if you grind everything.
Yep.
You can do so many things with it. So I would say probably 99% of the time, if not 100, all of our butchers just grind everything, put it 1 pound packages, and it's simple to use.
No, that makes good
sense. That's what we figured when we talked about it before. I was just curious if.
Yeah, you can do so much with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just more opportunity, and ultimately you can feed more people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can sneak some deer meat and some chili or some spaghetti as a food bank that someone wouldn't necessarily maybe want to eat. You know, you got kids that are coming to these food banks, and you just want to get them fed. Well, they may not eat a roast, but they might eat a cheeseburger slider like I had last night.
Mm-hmm. We were there's a local church that has a food pantry, and they have a couple doctors come in and do some like checkups and stuff on a biweekly basis, and they would take deer meat from us. They still do. And there was people that were getting the deer meat though, and they were like, we just don't know what to do with it. Sure. And we were going to say, it's just burger. It's like, it's simple. But they weren't sure because it wasn't beef. And so the Division of Wildlife, and this has been years ago, and I'd say they still have these available. They actually made little like index cards that had recipes on them.
Okay.
And they took it upon themselves. They said, wow, well, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so anyways, they created those, and then I took some of them and I would give them out to the food banks, and they would either put them in a grocery bag where they were giving groceries to these folks, or they would just have them sitting out to where people would take them and be like, okay, well, it's just ground meat. It's, but it was a way to get around that hurdle where people are like, well, I don't know if I want to eat deer. I don't know what it's like. It's like, that was a way to get around that hurdle. So, hats off to the Division of Wildlife for doing that, taking it upon themselves, because it did create an avenue to clarify some questions that people had.
Yeah, as good as it is, I mean, there's still that unknown, right? Mm-hmm. People put so much trust in the process. Mm-hmm. Going to the store, buying bright red hamburger, coming home, cooking it, and knowing, I use air quotes, what that is, as opposed to eating wild game. You get a little bit of gaminess flavor that people might not be accustomed to. So I could see where that would be definitely a hurdle, if you will, especially in the food bank, and people showing up, or they just don't have the experience, so.
It's amazing to look back, and I don't have the numbers because we're still we've got a couple more weeks of deer season here in the state of Ohio, but I've talked to some other folks, and I think last 2 years, we've rounded out in the state of Ohio about 65,000 pounds of meat per year that have been donated.
That's awesome.
If you start multiplying that out, a quarter pound servings, I mean, you're talking over 200,000 meals.
That's great.
To people that would have never had that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you telling that to Paul and Andrew when you were with those guys, and I was just like, gosh, man, 250,000 meals, like I mean, and for nothing. I mean, as a hunter, just to drop it off, I mean? So That's awesome.
For the hunter to just go out and enjoy his hobby. Maybe you can go so many directions, but maybe that avenue for him to get rid of that meat, that was an avenue for him to spend one more afternoon with his son. Maybe he doesn't see a bunch. His son came in from out of town. He's like, man, let's go hunting. So we used to do this when we were kids. So they spend that afternoon. That son maybe had to go home or whatever, daughter, and they were like, but let's take that buck or doe and we'll just donate it, but we'll have a good time. So it's forming community and just partnerships and just it's well rounded. There's not a bad thing about it. It works for everybody involved.
I tell you who's going to love this conversation more than anybody is Dan. I could see this being right up Dan's alley. Dan Wells, we had him on a couple times. He's a minister there in Dresden. Dresden, yeah. And that's all they do is they eat wild meat. And with him being a pastor, he's going to love this conversation. Kind of staying along this line too. It's a very passionate thing. You're very passionate about it. What's out of all the time that you've been in this, what's been probably that one moment that just makes you step back and be like, I'm doing something cool right now? That's a tough one.
During the break, I was telling Ben, I was telling Ben, you guys can't see it listening, but we've got these lapel pins I brought for you guys. Obviously, you're helping promote the organization, and so anybody that donates a deer, helps promote the organization, donates money, we like to give these lapel pins too.
Sure.
It was something I created 13 years ago. It was kind of an idea. I worked with Josh and said, hey, we need to give something back to these guys that are donating to us. So I designed this lapel pin. It started out as a patch, and it was like, let's go to a lapel pin. So that's what we did. We're 13 years in the making. They're all, labeled per year.
Okay.
And maybe that's one thing that has meant the most is now. Really, it was after the first couple years, but we have people that will donate a deer every year just to get a pin.
That's awesome.
And so that's meaningful to me that somebody's willing to take their time, their money, and they do it for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
ultimately, they do it for others.
Well, right. They do it for us to give to others. And it's really, we're just an avenue for them to give meat to other people.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's the greatest thing about it, but it is something that stood out that we created this lapel pin, and now people want to donate just to get a lapel pin, so they have the whole collection.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
It is astounding though when you look back at the. I mean, there was times probably 10 years ago when I was doing 12,000 pounds of meat myself, like not me personally, but in my chapter of people that were donating to my butchers. Now, granted, I'm northeast of Columbus, so we got that kind of bubble as you go out, Interstate 70. The deer population is greater and greater and greater. But just to think in that part of the state, when you're doing that much meat and that many meals, it makes you feel good. It's not me. It's just I'm just an avenue of helping make it happen.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's just amazing, and it's amazing that it's part of the natural world. I love talking to the kids. Which now they're grown, but and they think I'm goofy, but to think that, right outside here, right outside where we're at right now, there's something that's physically our same size, just roaming around out there, and it's food.
Yeah.
And why would you not want to chase that or learn that hobby or have that experience?
It's awesome.
Yeah. I
got to give him a pause on that one just to let that sink in for people. Because it's true. It's true. And it's the whole organization, as someone that's faith-based and has worked with different companies that have put a lot of emphasis in, the Food Pantry Network or the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. I've been in inner city Columbus passing out fresh vegetables for people on previous employment. And I'll tell you, man, like, you get out of that and you just appreciate your life so much more. So much more. Because it's like, these people are like going crazy over romaine lettuce. And it's like, I could just go 5 minutes down Kroger and buy some. And not everyone has that, has that option. So that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I'm sure, that you've touched a lot of people. And I'm sure it makes you feel good every day, like just knowing that I donated, I helped part of my chapter donate 200-some thousand meals.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's something to, like you just said, to think that maybe, I've been somewhat in that world in part of my life, but we don't deal with that every day. We're not food insecure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are. And again, I go back to anybody that's listening that's not in touch with the natural world. It doesn't have to be hunting. It doesn't have to be fishing, but go enjoy the natural world. It's there for our taking.
Yeah.
And we could go, talk about public, private land and all that, but there's so many opportunities for recreation to just enjoy what we have and experience what's out there.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It reminds me of Waddell saying, "You're a grown man." He's like, "Go bird watch or something."
Yeah.
Like, you mean to tell me I don't trust anybody that don't hunt and fish?
He's like,
I'm at least go bird watch.
Yeah, something about playing Nintendo or Sega or whatever he said.
Yeah, our default, there's our default is you flip the TV on, pick your phone out of your pocket, whatever. But my gosh, there's so many cool things to see out there. You drive down the road and watch a bald eagle scavenging on something, or it's just get in touch with the natural world, please.
I saw the most American thing ever the other day. I was driving on 204 to work. And there was a roadkill doe about 300-400 yards off in the field, and I saw what we have those vultures around all the time.
The black vultures.
Black vultures, yeah. I mean, they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. But this one had a white head. I'm like, there is a damn bald eagle munching down on a roadkill doe. I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've seen yet this year. Like it was just a couple weeks ago. I was like, man, that's cool.
And I tell you, you could go to the zoo and see a bald eagle if you want.
Yep.
But for anybody that's seen a bald eagle in the wild,
it's sweet.
It makes you pause. It makes you pause and just, wow. One, just because it's neat. Two, it's a big ass bird.
Oh yeah, yeah, they are big.
You see that thing scavenging on something in a field. I mean, it stands proud and it stands tall.
Yeah.
And
I mean, just think, I was going 50 miles an hour and it was 300 yards away, and I knew exactly what it was. I'm like, dang.
Yeah. Too bad they don't scavenge on them black-headed vultures. Things they're invasive as can be. They're all over the place.
So we talked about Archery Hike and what our experiences was. We're definitely looking forward to this year's. What do you have planned for us this year for Archery Hike? Same thing or a little bit different this year?
So same thing, but I want it to be bigger and better.
Okay.
I've got a few ideas that actually I wanted to bounce off you guys and anybody listening. Comment on posts you see or get in touch with me and say, hey man, I'd like to see this or why don't you do this?
Sure.
And I'll get back in touch with everybody. But let's announce it now. Archery Hike Hocking Hills 2023 is going to be July 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay.
For all you IBO shooters, it's the weekend prior to the third leg of the IBO at Hocking College. So if you're going to be in town shooting IBO, maybe you can come in a week ahead of time and stay that weekend. There's plenty of cabins, Airbnbs, VRBOs, whatever, to stay. Come enjoy the hike. It's not a competition shoot. It is strictly just have fun, get out and make that double lung shot. Put yourself in that real life situation. But I can guarantee that will prepare you for the following weekend at IBO. Yeah. I will say this year. So last year we were roughly 1.5 miles through 28 acres. This year, I have it mapped out with a couple surrounding landowners that it's actually going to probably be in that 3 mile area and at least double the elevation change and gain.
That's awesome.
Jesus.
I'm excited about that.
We better start hiking. We better get on that treadmill right now. No, I'm just kidding.
One thing that hindered Archery Hike last year was we did it on a whim, kind of just creating it.
Yeah.
And what can we do real fast? And so we, obviously we have the trail markers, and you'll have the trail markers again. There was 12 trail markers last year. I'm going to have somewhere in that, so 24 targets. Sure. Well, 12 trail markers, 2 targets at each.
Yep.
The idea this year, the way I've kind of got it mapped out right now, is there'll definitely be 24, if not 30 trail markers. So 30 targets, and they'll all be individual setups.
Okay.
So you, instead of going that 1.5 miles and having two targets at each trail marker, it's going to be roughly 3+ miles, and you'll have 30 individual trail markers.
Millstone better keep that beer nice and cold for us when we get done, because we're going to need it.
The good part is the way that it's mapped out is that if you needed a break, you want to come down and get some water or just hang out. Again, we don't do setup time. Show up and go shoot.
Yep.
Get out there and go at your own pace. If you need to come down off the hill, the cabin or an area that you can sit down is very accessible. Sit down, take a break, have some, shoot the bull with your buddies, whatever, and let some people pass by and get up and get going again.
Sure.
One thing I wanted to mention, see what you guys thought. An idea that I had was to try to set up something special. This isn't an advertisement for Savage Race, but my daughter and I and friends, we run a Savage Race.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
River Mountain.
I've heard that.
And they do a couple different things, a couple different size races, the Go Ruck deal, and some fitness challenges. And in my eyes or my head, I'm thinking, well, if guys are preparing maybe to go out west, we had some people that came last year that they were heading to Colorado to elk hunt this past fall, and so they wanted to come and do Archery Hike. To prepare for that was to make some type of a challenge with a rucksack or a heavy hiker. Sure. I don't know what to call it, but I think you guys that come to Archery Hike this year, there's going to be an opportunity to become part of a club, maybe the Heavy Hiker Club. And it'll be, you're taking a pack that's 45 pounds or more, maybe 50 pounds, and you're going to carry that the whole hike, just like you would in a real life situation. Yeah. You're going to be packing, meat or just packing camp back to a base camp. And I think that's something you'll see this year. That'd be cool. Some type of a special club that people want to get into.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea, I think.
Yeah, the ruck thing is blowing up. Yeah. I know I did in similar fashion. I did Tough Mudders before my kids got too old, and I don't really have the time for it. But one of the guys, I did 4 Tough Mudders, and one of the guys that was with me when we went to Pennsylvania to do the Pennsylvania one up north of Pittsburgh. We did a heavy pack out. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 50 pounds. Mm-hmm. And that's 10 miles, 50 pounds, 10 miles. And we rotated. Here's what we did. We talked about this earlier. We had we were Sasquatch hunters. Mm-hmm. And so he had a full-size Sasquatch. I think her name was Rosie. And we took her with her. He had her nails painted and everything. So you had a fireman carry the Sasquatch. And if you weren't a fireman carrying the Sasquatch, you had to carry the 50-pound ruck. And I'll tell you what, you get humbled quickly,
real fast.
What's
the old saying? You never know how out of shape you are until you try to drag a deer. Yeah, and you're like, yep, I'm pretty out of shape, and it's
the
no
truth,
different
for sure. Yeah,
we've talked. I was preparing to go to Alaska on a caribou hunt last year, and then with the whole. It's a whole other topic, but caribou hunting gets shut down. I was preparing. I was hauling a pack. I walk my dog every day, 1.5 miles, a couple miles a day, and I was hauling I actually had 60 pounds of rocks, just gravel in a pack, and I would take that with me because I'm like, we're going to be out in the bush, and there ain't nobody. It's you, and so I was doing that up until the time the regulations changed and we couldn't go. But anyways, to your point, you get humbled real quick. You think, it's 50 pounds. Well, you put 50 pounds on your back for 10 miles, your legs are jello.
We did.
But it's very rewarding when you get done to know that, wow, I did that. And trust me, your mind will do it if you make your mind do
100%.
it. You can do it.
100%.
And that's the whole idea behind, Heavy Hiker or whatever we end up calling it. You can do it. Test yourself. Get out there and do it. Work hard.
Your body is more capable than what you think. You think for sure. My wife always tells me all the time. She's like, man, there'd be a time I'd go run a 5K with like no practice, and she's like, I'm still at 30 minutes, so I'm not like super fast, but I'm not super slow. She's like, you didn't even train for that. I was like, you gotta be mentally in the zone that's what you're gonna do, and you're gonna accomplish it until it's done. And there's no different. I equate that to hunting, or I equate that to out west, or just packing a ruck. I think we did a 5K with a local 5K with a ruck too. It was like 25 pound. I pushed my kid in a stroller. Reagan, but she was a baby. I pushed a stroller and carried a ruck. I'm like, I can't run the 5K because I'm with my family, but I might as well just push it, and you can do it for sure. So that'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Was there anything last year? Now that we've kind of reviewed what last year was, and going into this year that you guys would change or that we should add, take away. It sounds everything's been pretty positive.
Our experience was so unique in the fact that my rain jacket was on, my rain jacket was off, my rain jacket was on. So the only thing I would say, we had to bushwhack a little bit. I know you liked it.
I enjoyed it.
I would have liked a little bit less, but it still was fun. It still was fun at the same time, But I know I say bushwhacking, and again, we go back to he carried these targets up there by himself. So it wasn't horrible by any means, but it certainly wasn't like you're walking a trail,
right?
Per se. I mean, there was at times you could see, but it hadn't got to a point where it was beat down enough that you could really get a good idea. That was the only thing, but that's just my thought, and that's nitpicky for sure.
The only thing I would say is maybe if you're doing the trail, well, you won't be doing it anymore because you're only going to have one target at each place. But maybe like if you laminated the description at each pin, that way people can read it when they get there.
Yeah,
I think that's
not a bad idea.
The service thing could have been another thing too. I know the service isn't great until we got to the top of the hill. Another thing could have been like a QR code that they scan to take them to a page that you can just have it there, so you can have it on your phone.
I bounced around those ideas because all those are definitely applicable, because service or rain or whatever. I wanted to go full bore originally, and as you see on the trail guide, there's GPS coordinates for every trail marker. And what I would like to do is have the shooters get that to the shooters beforehand, and they go to OnX or GoHunt or whatever app you use, even a Garmin or whatever, and you put those waypoints in.
Yep.
And really make it like a backcountry adventure. The only downside of that, it's very hard because of liability. You can't just have people out randomly walking around trying to find a trail marker.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't totally go full bore, because of just safety concern. And I ended up flagging a fair amount of the trail, even though it wasn't a trail. It was, you kind of had to bushwhack through some stuff.
Yeah.
Just, again, real life situation. That's why I did that. Because it's as hardcore as we want it to be.
Yeah.
You kind of got to think about safety and forth.
Yeah.
So I want to put more emphasis on the hike and make that a stretch, or make that a challenge for people to hike, and then calm that heart rate down, make the shot, go pull the arrow. Cool. And I think that's what you'll see as we go into this year. The other part of that with the trail guide is I think I might actually write the trail guide, but then read it and make it an audio file and email it to everybody prior. So when they show up, they have that downloaded on their phone. They can just pull it up. As you head to trail marker 2, you'll see blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. And then, when you reach trail marker 3, give the description, pause this until you go pull your arrows, and head to trail marker 4.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how much you guys get out and hike and stuff, but there are audio guides and random places that they'll, and it works really well. So I think that's one way that we'll try to fix that situation, that the shooters can get it beforehand, download it on their phone or save it, and then they have it regardless of service. It'll be on their phone, and they can listen to it, and that'll walk them through the hike.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
Yeah.
The other thing too would be to utilize that mapping feature, like OnX. I know you could just set the waypoint. You could almost build your own custom template, and you could that's where you need to walk. And just about everyone that's actively out west uses some type of tracking system. Most people are using OnX, so it's pretty common. But you could do something like that too. That would be.
Can you just share those? So I use OnX as well.
Yeah.
But if you would plot all those, could you just share that?
I believe you can.
That walk path, and then people could download it.
I believe you can. Yeah, because I know we've done it for like tracking and stuff. When we
did it for waypoints on that hunt.
Yeah, on that hunt, we could share waypoints or share areas of interest. Yeah, I think you can. If you had the app, you could just download that. Something to look into.
Yeah, definitely. Because like you said, the majority of people they're using some type of mapping system.
Well, we can download the mapping offline. It's available to you offline. It doesn't matter where you are. And then it could potentially add a sense of realism to the fact that if we were going to Wyoming or Colorado, you're going to be using that software anyway. Get familiar with it, but
definitely,
there's a lot of ways to skin that cat for sure. For sure. Well, this has been great, man. I knew we were going to have fun talking today. Before you go, let's give the listeners an idea where they can find you. I know you're on Facebook and Instagram. If you can, those tags. If you don't remember, that's fine. We'll put them in the show notes below too. So
super simple. Facebook, it's Archery Hike. Instagram at Archery Hike. And you can find me personally on Facebook as well. But at Archery Hike, and then archeryhike.com is our website, and that will be updated fairly soon. I would say definitely by March 1 with all the current information to to get registered for this year's shoot. Again, July 7, 8, 9, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Perfect.
And pretty much the same as last year. Just get on the website and register, and you'll be good to go.
I'm excited, man. And, of course, we'll definitely share all that stuff as well, just like we did last year, too. You know, we'll have the flyers and everything in there in the store, I'm assuming. And then, of course, on our Vance social media accounts, we'll definitely help share that for you, too, because I'm sure, we'll want to partner up with you. So.
Yeah, again, big shout out to Brandon and you guys for having me on. But Vance Outdoors has been huge in making this happen. Honestly, it wouldn't have happened without you guys, and so I appreciate the support.
Awesome. No better way to end it right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you listening. All right, everyone, that is all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Justin. We had a great time talking with him about our experience with Archery Hike and the great work that he and many other chapters are doing with farmers and hunters feeding the hungry. We certainly look forward to shooting the course this summer, and hopefully some of you listeners can join us. As always, we appreciate you listening, and until next time, enjoy the pursuit.